Hey everybody, this is the Montana Bushcraft, and this time I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do a review of a book. Uh, this is the Survive Essential Skills and Tactics to Get You Out of Alive, or Out of Anywhere Alive by Stroud. And for any of you who don't know who he is, he's the host of Survivor Man and the narrator, I think. And first, I'd like to say that this is, I think, a really nice book to have in your library if you don't already have it. First, we'll go ahead and go over uh, the contents here. So, the first one is the introduction. First chapter is trip planning and preparation. Second chapter is survival skills. The third chapter is psychological aspects of survival. The fourth chapter is signaling. Fifth chapter is water. The sixth chapter is fire. The seventh chapter is shelter. The eighth chapter is food. The ninth chapter is survival, travel, and navigation. The 10th chapter is dangers and hazards. The 11th chapter is weather. The 12th chapter is clothing. The 13th chapter is survival, first aid. 14th is essential survival skills. And the last chapter is when disaster strikes close to home. And then there's author notes, checklists, acknowledgments, and then the index. While I've been reading this book, there have been quite a few pages that I kind of noted, and first one's on the first chapter, trip planning and preparation. There's a lot of, well, first, on all these chapters it shows a picture of him in the movie, or the TV show Survivor Man. That's where he gets a lot of his pictures for this book. Another great thing I love about this book is it talks about a lot of the stuff that he's proven to work in the show Survivor Man. So if you read this book and you've never seen the show, you can actually watch the show afterwards or even before and reference it to this book. That's one of the many reasons why I like this. But anyways, we'll go here. And the thing I like about this is, it shows a lot of pictures on this of different things. But on this first chapter here, the thing that I like the most is there's a list of vital things you should always know about any region you plan to visit. And I'm not going to read them all off, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. These are questions that you should answer before you go to that specific location. And that's one of the things I liked about this book. It's very knowledgeable. And then the second chapter here, it talks about survival kits, and it talks about making your own survival kit. Don't buy the ones that they sell. You can buy them, but the best survival kit that I've ever been aware of are the ones that you actually personally make yourself to fit your needs. But on here, right here, it talks about your complete survival kit, and it talks about like a bandana, a belt knife, and it talks about the reasons why you should have them, like dried food, duct tape. There's just a whole bunch of great things to know about if you wanted to make a, whether it's a bug out bag or a good bag, or even if it's one that you just wanted to use for bushcraft or hiking or camping, or even just one to keep in your car in case of an emergency. It talks about different things you should have, like a GPS. I mean, a lot of these, or some of these, are ones that you'd have to save up for, and you know, they're not that cheap, but they're a lot of these are, though. It talks about like a needle and thread. Another thing in this book is there's a lot of little things in here that talk about his tips. For instance, this one, it talks about how you can magnetize a needle to know, you know, how to do north. And then, you know, this is the complete survival kit. And then a lot of the chapters that are in this book, they talk about specific things for a region, like arid regions, the temperate forest regions, the Arctic and polar regions, the sea and the jungles and coastal regions. It even talks about the survival vehicle survival kit, and it's a lot of well thought out knowledge and information. And then on chapter 3 here, one thing I'd like to point out is different ways to react to a survival situation. For instance, it talks about panic and what panic is and how to deal with it. It talks about fear and anxiety and how to deal with that. Anger and frustration. And another really great thing about this book is it actually has real world survivors and their stories. I think there's about 3 or 4 different stories in this of different people that have survived. They're really good things to know. It's just incredible what some of these people have gone through, and they just had the will to live, and so they survived. And then, you know, it talks about, let's see, which one was this? This is talking about a father and his son, and the father gets injured, and the son takes it up to himself to help his father out. And it's a really great story. And so on the chapter of signaling, chapter 4, one thing I'd like to point out is it talks about SPOT, satellite messenger, and I've never once heard about these things, or even the emergency positioning indicator radio beacons. I have never heard of them except for in this book, and it's one thing that, I don't know, I'm pretty sure they cost a fortune, but it's really interesting. It tells you a little bit about the SPOT, how you can program a location and send it through a text message or an email, and that's a really informative little thing I've found out. You know, like I said, I've never known about them. And then moving on to the next chapter of water here, it talks about finding and collecting water, locating primary water sources. For instance, it talks about when you're walking downhill, and then how to observe changes in vegetation, to watch the sky, follow animal trails. And a lot of these I never would have ever thought about even thinking about Downhill I knew about, but the vegetation I never would have. Watching the sky I never would have. The animal trails I did, but following birds I never really knew about that. And then it also talks about tracking insects. That's a good thing to know. And then in here it even talks about using ice, snow, and slush to eat it. And before I read this book, you know, have read that you never want to eat it because you know, it can cool you down and everything. But this kind of changed my opinion about that. And then it talks about like last ditch water sources. And then moving on to chapter 6 on fire. If I can find the page here. One good thing about this too is it talks about preparation, and he has 3 stages of making tinder. I'm sorry about my shadow being in there, but 3 stages. That's really good to know. And this other page is all talking about the first stage, and the second stage is on this first paragraph right here, and then the third stage. So that's one thing that I enjoy reading about. There's a lot of people that have different opinions of how to make them, but this just talks about the way that he likes to. And so we'll move on here. There's another picture of him being in I think that was the one that was in the Arctic. It's either that or Alaska, I can't remember. But it shows a picture of him being in his show there. And another part in here talks about like butane lighter and matches, basically primary fire starting tools to use. I'm not going to go into specifics with these. It just talks about different ones to use. And then also, you know, how to make char cloth, and he shows you in pictures. Another thing that I have here is the fire bow. And the thing I like about this a lot is, I'm sorry about that, I didn't mean to hit the camera. The thing I like about this is it has a lot of in-depth information about how to make it, and you know, the materials you'll need. He even talks about using, you know, like poplar or any other semi-soft woods or soft woods or whatever he likes, and the process of making it. And then the good thing about it too is it shows in the pictures. Let me try to move right here. It shows pictures of how to use it, and it talks about them right here, of what, you know, what to do, and about the notch. And so there's a lot of great information in here that I liked. And it shows from beginning to the end of how to make fire with it. The one thing that I think the only thing I didn't like about this book, and this was in another book that I've read too, it talked about how you can combine potassium permanganate with sugar. And I've tried this a couple of times. I just used, I think it was just like regular you know, granule sugar, but it doesn't really specify too much of like what kind of sugar, if you need a certain kind, or if it needs to be coarse or anything like that. That's really the only thing I don't like throughout this whole book. Everything else I enjoy. And then moving on to the next chapter here, it like on chapter 7 for shelter, it talks about the importance of site selection. And then if you haven't seen the one that he used, I think in the Amazon there, it shows a little picture with him and this a bullet ant, and it was talking about, you know, first-hand knowledge that he knows about that bullet ant being it can be deadly if it, you know, if enough of them bite you or sting you. And moving on to the next chapter here, on chapter 8 on food, it and then, you know, one more thing about this shelters, you know, it shows different types of shelters that he's used for different locations, and he stresses the point that, you know, some locations or some shelters won't be necessary for certain locations while others will be better. He talks about a lot about it in the Amazon, how, you know, there's like the A-frame or you know, ones that keep you warm. They wouldn't be really good for the jungle. And then the next one here on chapter 8 on food, one of the things I like very much is the edible test, or the edibility test, and it goes in depth of what to do for trying plants that you've never tried before. So, I mean, it goes, it has 9, there's 5 on this side and then 4 more on this side of what to do. And the reason why I like this so much is that there's this other book that I read, and it also talks about the edibility test. However, it didn't specify of, you know, maybe waiting 45 minutes for something. Well, on here, it actually gives you a guideline. For instance, like rub the plant on a sensitive part of your body, such as your wrist, and it specifies waiting for 45 minutes to an hour for signs of any adverse effects. The other book that I read, it never said wait, you know, a certain time period. So that's one of the things I enjoy the most about this, is that it specifies. And one thing that I've been reading a lot about, and it always comes into almost every book that I've read, that if you pick the wrong plant, you know, it can kill you. And you don't really want to mess around with plants unless you absolutely know for sure that the plant you're looking at is, you know, a certain thing. And so the great thing about this is that, you know, if you have to try a new one, it tells you specifically of what to do. And then that's, you know, a really good thing to do, especially for somebody that's starting out like I am. I look at all shrubs and bushes and everything, and, you know, I don't know too much about them yet, but this is a great reference to have, and that's what I like about it a lot. And then also on another page here, I mean, it also talks about fishing techniques and pictures and diagrams for it. And it talks about snares, different snares you can do. Another thing right here I like is it talks about the figure four deadfall, and it's pretty specific of what to do with it. You can even follow these pictures which are on here, and it also talks about the Doug's deadfall, this gentleman Doug has made his own version of it, and so it shows right here too. So then moving on to the next chapter, chapter 9, for survival, travel, and navigation. One of the things that I'd like to point out is it talks about some crucial questions you should ask yourself before moving on if you're in a survival situation. So let's say that you're up in the mountains and you feel like, or maybe not the mountains, but if you're in a certain survival location, before you move, you should ask yourself these questions, and then it also gives reasons why you should stay. So the questions are right up here, and then the reasons why you should stay are all right here. So that's another thing I enjoy about it. Another thing here is the rate of travel. He stresses in this book quite a bit of, if you sweat, you die. I think throughout this whole book he's been, reminding you that if you're traveling, to go slow for many reasons. And another one is, if you sweat, you die. And then one of the tips I'd like to point out too is right here. While you're traveling, look backward often to see where you come from, so that you can recognize that view if you have to return. Few people do this, but few people do this, but it's well worth the more seconds it takes. And I thought that was really good to mention there. And then another thing here, it also talks about making a raft and crossing water if you have to, and what to do if you fall in the water. And one more thing I should point out before I go too far. I have a little cheat sheet on the side here, so I'm kind of going by it because I can't remember where all these pages are. But on page 217 to page 218, Stroud talks about his encounter with the moose, and so I thought that was pretty interesting to read. So that was kind of a good thing to read and be aware about. You can always learn from other people's mistakes, and fortunate for him, nothing ever happened to him, so that was a good thing. And then one last thing about this navigation is, if I can find it here, there we go, oops, lost it, is trailblazing. And I've read a few other things about how to trailblaze, but he's the first one that actually, I mean, it kind of seems like common sense, but I never really thought about it until now. But he says that when you want to trailblaze, make sure that you do it on 2 or 3 sides, so then you can make sure that you can see it from in front of you and from behind. I mean, it like I said, it kind of sounds like common sense, but I never really thought about it, so that's a picture of one of the ways that he trailblazes.